Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Brinkman. I'm a principal planner at FORA and a project manager for proposed Northeast-Southwest Arterial Connector. I want to welcome you here tonight for the scoping meeting for this proposed roadway. Thank you for being here. And for a moment, I'm going to just ask if there's any Spanish speakers, so I'll speak a little Spanish. Hola, buenas noches. Bienvenidos a la reunión de la propuesto Camino Noreste Suroeste Conector. Gracias por estar aquí. Si hay alguien que prefiere hablar y escuchar español, por favor, leva la mano. Okay. So I'm not seeing anyone who prefers Spanish tonight, but if we did, we have a translator that's available to assist tonight. So I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. As you noticed when you came in the room, we have cookies and water on the table on the left here, to be to your right. And then also, important to know, we have bathrooms on this floor. It's just down the foyer. There's a hall on the left before you get to the elevators. And there's a women's and a men's bathroom back there. Also, if you didn't already when you came in, there's a sign-in sheet. So please sign in if you want to be added to our notifications, when documents will be up for review, and when there'll be meetings in the future. When you're on the list, you'll get those notifications ahead of time. And then I will just introduce Erin Harling. She is our environmental consultant for this proposed project, and she'll give you a brief presentation and keep the meeting rolling tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thank you all very much for being here. It's really hard to get over to Salinas from the peninsula, especially during rush hour, and I appreciate everyone's time. And thank you all to FORA staff as well, and DD&A staff for being here to man these tables. So I'm going to start with a meeting overview. We'll go over introductions. I'll take a moment to introduce the staff that's available for you tonight here. And I think we're lucky enough to have a small enough group we can go around the room and introduce ourselves and maybe whatever information you want to share where you're from, what your interest is, or interests are in the project. And I will give an overview of the proposed project and the environmental review process, and we'll discuss the purpose of today's scoping meeting, and then we'll break into public comments, and then we'll break into the charrette portion of the evening. We are scheduled to go till 8:30, and the charrette portion we are trying to give it at least an hour for people to give their comments and talk about their concerns with the project. So that's the plan. So again, I'm Erin Harling. I'm with Denise Staffing Associates. I'm the senior project manager for the Environmental Impact Report, EIR. If I go into crazy acronyms, that's my job, and just raise your hand and say, Erin, what does that mean? And I'm happy to take your question and clarify. So maybe we'll just go around the room real quick. We've got Heidi over here at the sign-in table. She's got name tags, sign-in sheets, speaker cards, and comment cards for you. And Ermelinda and Ikuyo are here to help as well. We have maps and base reuse plan and a number of items to peruse. And then we have Diana and Ashley here from DD&A, and they're helping with getting everyone their comment cards and speaker cards and helping facilitate the discussions. We have Frederick Venter from Kimley Horn, our traffic engineer, and Andy Hunter from Whitson, our civil engineer. And way in the back we have Peter Said from FORA, Mary Israel from FORA, planner and engineer, and we have Sherry Damon and from FORA, and Steve Ensley from FORA, and of course Jonathan. Did I miss anybody? Oh, and our facilitator. Anybody?
What does CEQA mean?
Thank you, Steve.
I just thought I'd start the meeting.
I appreciate that. CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. It's our state law that we are complying with by holding this scoping meeting and getting you all involved at the onset of this environmental review process. Thank you, Steve. Do we want to take a moment and just introduce ourselves? We'll start with Henrietta.
Okay, hi, I'm Henrietta Stern, and I'm with MORCA, the Monterey Off-Road Cycling Association, and also Fort Friends, Fort Ord Recreation Trails Friends. And I'm an avid cyclist and hiker and really love the Fort Ord area.
Thank you.
My name is Nick Madronio. I'm the treasurer of Morca, and I also am an avid trail user in the pros project area. So I'd just like to see how that's going to affect the recreational opportunity for the trail users in the area.
Great.
I'm Lisa Ansani, and I'm running for mayor in Seaside. With it going right through the town, I'm really interested. I'm also concerned, and I'll just share that right now, that you have the public meeting tomorrow being held the same day as our city council meeting. And I encourage you in the future as FORA to make sure, especially for something that's so specific to Seaside, that you find other dates other than our council meetings, which are twice a month on Thursday.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Hi, I'm Brian Babcock. This is my daughter Sarah. We live on East Garrison, and we live on Watkins Gate, so this impacts us greatly. So that's why we're here today.
Great. Thank you. And
Hi, I'm Joelle Lobo. I'm with the U.S. Army Presidio of Monterey and Ord Military Community in Seaside.
great. I think I sent that notification to you, didn't I? I got your email from Bob. All right. And in the back there, we'll start with John.
I'm John Wizard. I'm from Seaside and running for city council there.
Great.
I'm Nona Childress. I'm running for city council here in Salinas and looking at larger picture regional issues that may affect my candidate, my constituents.
Great. Jim?
My name is Jim Kelly. I'm also a resident of East Garrison and cycling out to Fort Ord National Monument frequently.
Great.
And I'm Bob Geedy. I'm with the Presidio of Monterey Department of the Army, and I'm the community planner there, looking at the impacts of this project in relationship to the Fort military.
Great. Thanks all again for coming. The NOP, which again is up here and available if you need a copy. Again, the NOP is an acronym for the Notice of Preparation. It's what initiates this public process for the environmental review. So it outlines very detailed the project background, and given the history, I'm trying to go through it, summarize it very briefly, but if you have any further questions, I'm happy to take them. So back in 1997, Fort Ord Reuse Authority prepared the base reuse plan, which included a transportation network. It was developed in coordination with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, which we call TAMC, another acronym, and other state and local agencies. So that, and all the details were covered in the 97 Fort Ord Transportation Study. The transportation network includes segments that are included in our proposed project, including the East Side Road segment and the Giggling Inter-Garrison Connector segment. FORA's Development and Resource Management Plan requires FORA to fund its fair share of on-site, off-site, and regional transportation and transit capital projects. And on-site, when we use that term, refers to improvements happening within the Fort Ord boundaries. So since 1997, that was a long time ago, FORA, the Fort Ord Reuse Authority, has been coordinating with TAMC to monitor the current projected traffic service levels in on-site, off-site, and regionally. In doing that, they worked together to complete a 2005 fee reallocation study. And that study revisited the obligations from the 1997 transportation network. And so the 2005 study decided, based on the changes in land use and another set of variables, there was some rerouting and some reorganization of what those transportation improvements would look like. And one of those was a rerouting, conceptual reroute of the East Side Road. And also a result of that study was the elimination of the Highway 68 bypass from the transportation network. So I can get into that with some maps in just a moment. So back in December 2009, after this 2005 study, FORA board prioritized the East Side Road project in its capital improvement program. The county renamed it Eastside Parkway. Whitson engineers and DD&A started some design and preliminary environmental review around that time, 2010, 2011, 2012. There is a preliminary environmental checklist, initial study checklist, available on FORA's website that identifies identifies the potential environmental impacts of the proposed Eastside Parkway, which is a different alignment than what we're looking at today, just to keep the background clear. So after that point, we decided, based on lack of funding, to put the project on hold. So the project's been on hold for quite some time. And so back in 2017, FORA looked at its funding availability and its projections, and it looks like funding might be available in the next few years to construct this proposed project. And in 2017, TAMC also completed another fee reallocation study, which included the Eastside Parkway as it was drawn back in 2012. So I did a lot of reading there because it's a pretty complicated history. This alignment, this roadway, this improvement on site, on the base, has been conceptually included in all these analyses since 1997. So where we are now is we have reaffirmed the need for this alignment in the 2017 study, and here we are trying to define that alignment. Lisa, do you have a question?
I do. I'm curious to what the funding that FORA sees coming, or kind of just ballpark. I mean, is it 100 million? Is it 50 million? Is it $500 million? Swags?
So FORA collects fees. The primary fee funding our roadway network is a development fee. We collect a community facilities district special tax on development. So before a building permit is issued to developer or to an owner of property, they come and pay a fee to FORA. So in the last fiscal year, we collected about $7 million from development that occurred on the base. And so that's our primary funding source.
But that doesn't answer, I'm curious to
The
what the
budget
road,
for
how much will it cost, kind of?
Yeah, the budget for the road is about around 18 million, 19 million.
And I assume you're getting some TAMC money, or
No,
is it just FORA?
This is just FORA funding.
Okay, thank
and
you for
potentially
clarifying.
grants from federal and
Okay.
state agencies. So we're not, it's not.
Some matches or?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So also back in December of 2017, when this project was reinitiated, the environmental review process was reinitiated, we, FORA and DD&A held a public meeting to solicit input on the project goals and objectives. We drafted proposed goals and objectives and took them to the FORA board for consideration based on public comment, stakeholder comment, FORA board comments. They were revised, and this is what was approved. This is the primary purpose, and again, all the objectives are included over here on the table, but I didn't list all 20 of them here for you today. But all of them, all those objectives support the implementation of this proposed project purpose. Do you want me to read it or leave it up here for you to read?
You want to summarize some more of the objectives?
Sure. So the primary purpose of this project is to make transportation improvements on site on the former Fort Ord necessary to reduce future traffic congestion along Highway 1, 12th Street, which is now Engine Parkway, Blanca Road, and the Del Monte, 2nd Avenue, and General Jim Moore Boulevard corridor, while maintaining the valued cultural, recreational, and natural resources consistent with the reuse plan EIR and the development and resource management plan. So it's pretty loaded, to say the least. So as I mentioned, the alignment that we looked at back in 2012, where the designs were drafted and we did this preliminary environmental assessment, we went back to the drawing board based on the approved goals and objectives we received from the public and the FORA board. we conducted a preliminary project screening analysis, the purpose of which was to identify and recommend a project to be analyzed as a proposed project in the environmental review process that we're doing here today. And we need that proposed project to meet most of the approved goals and objectives and be potentially feasible. This analysis was also the first step, not the last, just the first step in identifying potential alternatives. Alternatives will be drafted and developed and analyzed and addressed throughout the environmental review process. We've started with a small list of 3 other ones that we're recommending from the screening analysis, but it's not the end all be all. And alternatives will be part of what you bring us today. They'll be what our technical studies bring us later. So it's not an exhaustive list. So how did we conduct this screening analysis? So we ran everything through a first tier to see which of the potential projects would meet the underlying project purpose. Was that paragraph that I showed you a few slides back. So those that passed on from the first tier made it to the second tier, which ran through the feasibility criteria, which we looked at a number of criteria including legal, regulatory, technical, economic, and environmental feasibility factors. And we specifically focused on the ability to acquire right-of-way, which is that ROW there you see there, potential impacts to the Fort National Monument, which is FONM right there, and also the feasibility of acquiring regulatory permits. So those projects that made it through the second tier went to the third tier. So of those that passed, we ran those projects through 3 additional environmental factors that we considered. One is that we wanted to avoid widening Reservation Road from East Garrison Drive to Watkins Gate Drive, and I'll show you in a map in a moment what that looks like. We also wanted to avoid widening Inter-Garrison from Schoonover to East Garrison Drive. We also wanted to avoid impacts to the conservation easement parcel. By really honing down on what potential project we picked and what potential impacts would occur from those projects, we really wanted to focus on mitigating or reducing those potential impacts. So what were our results? Well, we came up with 41 potential projects. And again, I have a desk copy here of this screening analysis, which has the 41 projects in 11 by 17 format here if you want to look through the rationale. Only 4 projects of those 41 made it to the third tier. And so those were held against those additional 3 criteria I just talked about, the 2 widening of those roadways and the conservation easement parcel. We also had 3 other potential projects that, of those 4, they were pretty good. They're feasible. They just didn't score as high as the orange alignment. This is what we are referring to our proposed project line. And so we suggested that those 3 other potential projects also be included in the environmental analysis as alternatives. We also had a few project components that we came up. As part of those 41 projects, we realized, gosh, if we increase carpool opportunities, we had a great suggestion out there from the public about replacing stop signs and signals on General Jim Moore and replace those with roundabouts. And what would happen if we put park and rides and shuttles and buses in? So all of these 3, we decided these were feasible. Let's think about them as kind of add-ons to our proposed project. What alternative, where could we put these facilities and just make more benefit from the proposed project? So these are the 3 potential projects, and I'll walk through them. So we have this blue line here, so all 4 of them connect down here from, this is Eucalyptus, oh it is dying, Eucalyptus to Parker Flats. All of them start here at the Eucalyptus and connect all the way up to Giggling. And this is really to facilitate access to the MPC parcel and the cemetery, and also the monument. So once we get up to Giggling, that's where the 4 really branch out. We've got the blue to the north and the east, which as you can see is mostly CSUMB property, and I'll point that out. The blue is CSUMB, the green are habitat management areas, and the plain aerial are just development parcels, or designated development parcels in the reuse plan for various uses.
Can you point out, you referred to a conservation?
Yes,
plan?
I will
What is
definitely
that?
get there. So the benefits obviously of the blue is using existing roadways. We wanted to really, we heard the public, we wanted to use existing roadways as much as we could. Granted, this connector for all of the alternatives, or all of these proposed projects don't use existing roadways down here, but what can we do to maximize existing roadways? And that was the blue line. But it did have some consequences. It abuts right up to the East Garrison project and might result in increased traffic and noise impacts. So we were a little concerned about that. It's also not entirely sure that we can get a right-of-way. We can acquire the right-of-way from CHUMB on that property yet. We're still waiting, and they're letting us analyze this project and see how it moves forward. So this yellow line might look familiar. That's our 2012 alignment. And so we brought that forward to see what that would look like again. And you can see we've got this window, this gradient here, where we can go through development or stay on existing roads, or then we start impacting these habitat management areas. So we're really working within a very fine area and a gradient, trying to maximize use of existing roads while avoiding impacts to these habitat management areas. So again, the yellow did avoid the habitat management areas, and it did use a lot of existing roads. Well, a little bit up here, but it mainly is not a lot of existing roads. So the orange one, which is what we recommended, actually comes down, and because it skirts to the south, it does tend to avoid the East Garrison, the direct contact with East Garrison development there. And then this pink one, this is the trickier one. In order to, so this is the National Monument boundary right here, about right there. So in order to make sure that we, due to grading and topography and other constraints, we'd have to move the road into this conservation easement parcel, which I'll outline here. It's a little hard to see, but you can definitely see it on your map. It's red hatch. It's a red dash line. So given some of the pros and cons of these different alignments, we ranked them, and in our screening analysis, we recommended, again, moving forward with the orange alignment for our proposed project. So without the other alternatives, again, and Randy, you can really see the red dash line there for the conservation easement. So we're skirting around, but we're still going through habitat management areas. We're not using as many existing roads, but we also know we can have the right-of-way we need. So again, there's pros and cons. So what is the proposed project? It's approximately 4.5 miles of new roadway, extending from Eucalyptus Road to Watkins Gate Road. It's 2 lanes, 2. We will be including bicycle and pedestrian facilities, recreational improvements. When we go to break out, we'll talk about trail crossings and wildlife crossings, all kinds of opportunities to reduce impacts to recreational users. We're going to need to do intersection improvements down here at Parker Flats Cutoff, Parker Flats Road, Giggling, Ord, and Watkins Gate.
So is that what those, I was wondering what those block crossing.
So we have to improve those areas, and maybe at the end, Andy could speak to those details a little bit more. And again, we're very conceptual. We're aligned on the map right now. We try to narrow down where we're going to be, but it's going to be refined as part of the environmental analysis, including all these amenities that we're talking about.
Can you go back? The other two
Sure.
weren't clear on that map, so I see the 3 intersections.
Okay,
But you
so
said
there's
5,
Parker
correct?
Flats Cutoff,
Yeah.
Parker Flats Road, Giggling Road, and then we have, that's Ord Road, right?
Yeah, Ord and Watkins Gate.
Ord and Watkins Gate.
Yeah.
So there's an intersection here and an intersection here.
Okay.
And then Watkins Gate.
Yes, John?
Would be all right.
I
Thank
was
you.
curious to know what the difference between a conservation easement and a habitat management area is.
That's an excellent question, John. Thank you for asking. So, I am also working on the Fort Ord Habitat Conservation Plan. with the Fort Ord Reuse Authority. And so these green areas are habitat management areas as designated in the Army's Fort Ord Habitat Management Plan and also FORA's Habitat Conservation Plan. So these areas are to be preserved in perpetuity. So this funny, and all of them will have conservation easements. When the HCP is approved, that's going to be one of the Habitat Conservation Plan. That's one of the questions. Once the HCP is approved, that's going to be a requirement that they're all under conservation easements. Right, Jonathan?
Correct.
Yes. And so this one just started a little early because East Garrison Development had some CTS, which is the California tiger salamander. So it's a federally state-listed species. So when they started grading, they found some CTS and needed to do some additional mitigation. So they're doing some interim habitat management there, and they had to place that conservation easement early. So, how did I do, John? Did I get you? Okay. So, in addition to intersection improvements, we may or may not need to remove and add utilities, power poles, sewage, drainage, all that good stuff. So for more project information, again, FORA's website has a wealth of information. Not only does it have all the background-based documents, the reuse plan, the EIR, the development and resource management plan, but we also now have a site-specific or project-specific site for the connector project, and you'll find our community engagement plan, which outlines all the opportunities you will have for public participation and how we will be and when we will be scheduling those opportunities. You'll see that preliminary project screening memo that I discussed. We're going to have an email notification sign-up list, and we'll have events posted there as well. So there's lots of stuff online for you. All right, for the environmental review process. So again, CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. The purpose of CEQA is to inform governmental decision-making and the public and disclosing the potential environmental impacts of a project. It requires you to identify ways to avoid or reduce environmental damage from a proposed project and prevent significant damage by looking at alternatives and mitigation measures to do so. One of the main purposes is public disclosure, which is one of the reasons we're here tonight, to let you know how things are starting off and primarily what you want us to focus on, what you want us to address in this environmental analysis, and of course public participation. So FORA is acting as lead agency. They will be responsible for the environmental document. We are proposing to prepare, or we are preparing, that's what the notice of preparation informed you of. We will be preparing an environmental impact report, which is an EIR. It's the highest level of environmental review under CEQA. And the primary difference between that EIR level and other levels is that there's a very comprehensive alternatives analysis required. It's one of the primary differences. So, again, we just started this notice of preparation scoping period on August 24th. And so now we are here at our scoping meeting, about 2 weeks in, almost 2 weeks in. And so comments are due September 25th, which is the end of the 30-day comment period. At that point, we'll be taking public comments or scoping comments, public comments, and looking at how to address your comments in our technical studies and in the EIR itself. So we will be drafting our technical studies and preparing the environmental document, at which point we will publish a draft EIR for public review, and you'll get 45 days to review that document, and we will be holding community workshops, and we will give the FORA board an update and a presentation on the findings of the EIR. And that we're looking at about April of next year. Then we'll take all the comments that we receive on the draft EIR and we'll revise the document as needed and respond to comments and publish a final EIR, which you will also have an opportunity to review in about July of next year. And then we will take the project to the FORA board for decision about November 2019, which will include public hearings, and you will also have an opportunity to attend then and provide comments. So again, the purpose of today's meeting, we're inside this 30-day public comment period. We are soliciting comments regarding the scope and content of the EIR. So what should your comments look like? What helps us out the most to get this right the first time? And that's really what we want to do, is get it right the first time. Is to hear about what environmental issues or concerns you may have with the project. Discuss reasonable alternatives and mitigation measures that might be implemented to reduce impacts, and any other issues that you have related to the content of the EIR. So, we know this is an environmentally impactful project. We've known this from the start. We've got a lot of checklist items to go through. Many of which is, this checklist has been expanded since 2012. So if you look at the 2012 preliminary checklist, Henrietta, a lot of these won't be included. Tribal cultural resources is new, greenhouse gases may or may not have come out by then. So there's, just so you know, there's some changes. There's also changes coming out right now on the checklist, so we might be updating this as we need to. But we're looking at everything pretty much on the checklist. And we're looking at construction versus operational impacts, direct and indirect impacts, cumulative, and other required issues. So we want to hear from you tonight. We want to hear from you all the way until September 25th at 5 p.m. You can submit oral and written comments today. And written comments, again, are accepted until September 25th. At the end of the review period, we will be compiling and summarizing them, and they will be included typically as Appendix A of the EIR. So you'll see your comments there. You will be heard. So, in addition to, let me just finish this one? Okay. So in addition to verbal comments today, and if you want to provide comment cards today, before September 25th, you can email your comments to connector@fora.org. That's our project-specific email. You can email this address anytime with questions or information requests. Jonathan will love to hear from you. And then you can also mail, snail mail still exists. Send it to Jonathan at the address here below. I'll leave this up on the screen in just a moment. I think that's the last one. Yep. So I'll take Lisa's question, and then I'll give you a moment to ask any clarifying questions, and we'll open it up for public comment. Lisa?
Thank you for the informative, presentation. I was just curious, can people anonymously leave comments? It's something that I've learned is a concern for many people within Seaside in particular. So
that's
I don't
a
know.
really good question. And the best way to do that would be to submit a comment card without a name on it, or snail mail without a return address, or you just don't put your name on it.
So if people submit with their name on it, will it be part of the Appendix A, or?
Yeah,
that's fine. It's
is.
just good to know, and it's something that's coming up for me.
There's probably some sneaky way to just submit something and not have your name on it, and I don't mean sneaky in a bad way, but I understand it.
There's nothing on the website though to do just a comment and just to submit something on your FORA website. Okay.
No. Okay.
It's just something that's come up for me as I'm talking to people.
On the email system, you would not be able to do that. I think you've heard a couple of additional
No problem.
ways to
It's not for me.
Slip it
I'm
under
okay
Fora's door.
speaking.
You can slip it under Fora's door.
It's for others.
But
Thank you.
I do understand that it can be a little intimidating.
For yeah, no
I
problem.
don't think it's not against the rules. It's just a little difficult nowadays. Okay, so we have a pretty small group. Let's do, if someone wants to provide verbal comments, let's do 3 minutes a person. We're recording, I forgot to tell you. We're recording, so if you want to stand up here and let the room know what your concerns are, we can take notes and provide that in the record. We don't, huh?
Just stand in your chair.
Right, yeah, that might work too. I don't know. I think that it's important to note that we obviously can't tell you not to give us oral comments. It's just a lot easier if you write them down. It's room for interpretation, and we're taking notes. And so let's just, if you do provide verbal comments, please provide them in writing too. It just helps us keep the record straight. So, speaker cards. Ashley's collecting speaker cards. She's got, how many do you have?
I have one.
You have one. Would anybody else like to speak and fill out a speaker card? This helps us track as well.
I already spoke about just making sure you
Oh,
don't
I
have
didn't
meetings
have
for
your speaker
Seaside
card. Okay.
on council nights. Thank
Great.
you.
All right. Anybody else? Speaker card? All right.
I need a little, maybe I need to engage.
So after, just so you understand the whole shebang, so after public comments, we'll break back into our tables and we'll hear your comments on alignments, new alignments, whatever other comments you want to provide us on the maps. And we can have a short style meeting and we'll get back to that. I'll give you some logistics when we're done with public comments.
Did you want me to help clarify any of those?
Sure, the intersection
Yeah.
improvements?
You want to go back to that map for a second?
Sure. Thanks, Annie, I forgot.
Okay, I think Aaron was pausing for a second on this, so I just want to clarify the black lines. And this is the same map that's on your table. And we can huddle over these a little closer in a second, but the proposed project connects to the existing Eucalyptus Road that's stubbed out here at the bottom of the page. It doesn't go too far before it runs into an existing Parker Flats cutoff road, and Eucalyptus Road now has an existing arc that heads off to the east. So this is an intersection with the two existing paved roadways here, Parker Flats cutoff. A little bit more up to the north, Parker Flats Road. So this is bound the cemetery property and the MPC property here, so it's just a connector to the existing road there, Parker Flats Road. Further up is Giggling. So the yellow line is the county-city limit line. FORA has a CIP project for Giggling Road, and this extra little connector piece is connecting to that CIP Capital Improvement Program project back to this proposed roadway. And go to the other side here. At the East Garrison community, Ford Avenue is a north-south street. So this and Watkins Gate Road, as it goes through East Garrison, is right where my finger's showing here. And so this little connector would extend Ord Avenue south, make it an intersection with this new connector road. And then the connector road would merge back in with Watkins Gate Road as it's constructed with the East Garrison development. So I can help answer questions at the table later as we break off.
Great, thanks, Danny. All right.
Just a quick, and have you already described in the project description what type of, for example, 8th and Giggling is a very popular trailhead, what type of changes would occur, or is that something that you'll be evaluating and adopting?
So we haven't described it yet. The extent of our project description is what's included in the NOP. We have gotten, like I said, this black line, and based on comments, what we hear from the public, based on engineering, traffic, other technical studies, we'll start refining the design to be analyzed in the EIR.
So does that mean when you say these intersections, have you yet decided whether there'll be stoplights or stop signs or tunnels underneath or overpasses? It's just a place where you recognize
that there
there's going
needs
to be
something happening there to keep traffic moving. Right, Andy? We're going to be looking at roundabouts, tunnels, overpass, whatever. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. All right. Jim.
Yes, I didn't hear anybody who was from MST, and I'm curious if you know about any projections of this, because they serve the area really remarkably well, and if this goes through, for example, from East Garrison down to Seaside, would reduce a lot of traffic down one and all kinds of so I was wondering if there's anything currently being proposed. I don't imagine so. It's I would have heard about it, I imagine. But is there?
No.
That's what I thought.
We will, you know, MST doesn't have jurisdiction over the project, but we will be coordinating with them to be sure to incorporate any bus stops. For example, what if we did put a trailhead? Maybe we'd want to put a new bus stop there. We'd want to make sure we're not impacting their routes, and that sort of thing. And that's something that Frederick gets to look at in his traffic analysis, to look at transit facilities.
So can I say, so MSTs usually, they don't plan their services based on planned roads. They wait until it's built, and then they'll say, okay, can we put a service on it? Is there going to be a design on it? But that, like Aaron said, it doesn't mean that we cannot put in bus stops, you know, at trailheads or something that, you know, may serve the area. If the bus service comes in, you know, it's there. So that's surely a comment you can make.
Yeah, no, that's historical.
Great, good question.
Quick logistical question, is your presentation online anywhere, or will it
It's
be?
not yet,
Okay.
but we will post it.
All right, in terms of, I'd be happy to make a comment, I filled out a card.
Okay. Would you like to go first? Oh, Jim was first, technically.
You can
Okay.
also,
You filled out a comment card, or a speaker card. Did you want to speak on an issue? No, you're okay? I'm sorry, Rayla? No? All right.
I was just gonna request that you go to the front of the room so we can test on camera.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've heard differing things. I'm not sure what the camera grabs, so yeah, Henrietta, maybe you could stand up, maybe by the laptop. Thank you.
Wherever the camera is. Hi, I'm
It's up
Henrietta
there.
Stern, and I'm speaking, representing MORCA, the Monterey Off-Road Cycling Association. I'm also on the board of Fort Friends, Fort Ord Recreation Trails Friends. We haven't formally addressed this yet, but we'll likely be submitting a formal comment letter. And also, I'm going to add one comment that's my own, but certainly the MORCA board has expressed some concerns. Just so you know, MORCA is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's the voice of responsible mountain biking in Monterey County. We're a chapter of the International Mountain Biking Association. We work very closely with the Bureau of Land Management in terms of trail maintenance and even design and construction of trails for the benefit of all users. We've also recently got an $18,000 grant and worked with the County of Monterey to do trail signage, and Nick actually headed that effort. You'll notice if you go out, all the county trails have numbers now, and we'll be developing maps and other things for the safety and benefit of the public. Something that's really very special about what we call the Happy Trails area, this area that's on the map, is that there is no vehicular traffic once you leave the trailheads of either 8th and Giggling, the Jerry Smith Access Corridor, or also now at the East Garrison area. So the EIR should address some of our concerns, and I'll just highlight them very briefly, and I have written this down. One is just the overt destruction and loss of the newly signed trails that we worked so hard with the county to develop, that this road would literally go right through some of them. Some of you may have heard of Strava. It's an app that enables recreationists, hikers, runners, equestrians, mountain bikers, whoever, to track their riding. And we did what we call the Strava heat map, and we'll be submitting this more formally, that accumulates all the different trails that people have been on. And the line that it generates gets brighter and thicker the more people use it. And the biggest lines are, your road goes right through them. So there's an overt impact to the most popular trails, and trails that we've worked very hard with the county to newly sign and for everyone to enjoy. Another key issue, and it sounds like you might be addressing this, is the loss of safe access to the county trails as well as the Fort Ord National Monument trails due to a busy roadway that now people would have to cross, especially if you think someone on a horse, you know, someone with a child, someone who might be in a wheelchair or, you know, stroller or those kinds of things. How are people going to safely get across this road? Also, a real concern about the duplication of Inner Garrison and this road. You know, not very far distance apart, that creates a squeezing effect, almost an island kind of situation, especially thinking about the wildlife and how are people safely going to get across two roads now. Also, wildlife more pollution, noise, the greater potential for more trash and dumping in more locations because you have more cars, cigarettes being thrown out, and fire danger. And you think of how the recent fires in California have been started by sparks from a tailpipe or whatever. Now you have another road, you know, deeper into the natural areas. That's a great concern to us. As you mentioned, CEQA calls for the project to avoid, reduce, mitigate, or compensate in that order. So this parallel roadway alignment is of great concern to us. It seems like it's maximizing impacts rather than minimizing impacts to both recreationists as well as the habitat, the flora and the fauna. And so these are the written comments here, but I'd just like to add, you noted in your description of why you chose certain alignments of the impact. You didn't want it too close to the East Garrison. But East Garrison itself, that development destroyed habitat and a lot of recreational opportunities that used to occur exactly where that development is. So should the alignment of a proposed new road be based on the impacts to something that already has adversely impacted the environment and the recreational opportunities? It seems like from a cumulative impacts perspective, it's much greater with the proposed alignment than with going with a road that already exists, like working on Inner Garrison itself. So that's my personal comment that's in this comment.
Great.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Henrietta. Anybody else want to come up and speak? All right.
Sure, I'll do it.
Oh, okay, great.
Might as well.
Thank you.
Somebody's got to do it. So my comments aren't really that long. I just, I graduated from CUCMB. I've been living in the area for almost 10 years, and I've seen kind of the East Garrison area go from being sectioned off with chain link fences to houses now being there. And I myself am an avid, hiker, biker, dog walker, you name it. I'm out in Fort Ord pretty much every day. And Walking Gate is actually kind of a main access point for not only myself, but other East Garrison residents. And what I'm really concerned about is just the pedestrian and hiker aspects of this road, because like Henrietta, I think it was, had pointed out that it would kind of create this island, and where do you park to access Fort Ord? You park on either Inner Garrison or 8th Avenue. So those are the two main ways to access Fort Ord that a lot of people use. And so if there is that main road going through there, where are people going to park? So that's going to still force a lot of people to park in the same spots that they normally park at on Inner Garrison and 8th Avenue. And so they're still going to be having to cross that road a lot. So it's just, I'm really concerned about how that's going to affect, pedestrians. If you put a major roadway in there, and I understand, you have appropriate crosswalks and so on and so forth, but I'm not really too keen on it. And again, as Henrietta pointed out, you already have Inner Garrison right there. It's going parallel to it. I don't really see how this would be a major benefit. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Sarah. All right.
Public comment be at the end. I'm feeling like I need to interact with the maps, so I'm going to have a better understanding before I maybe share some of my comments.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, I wanted to give at least an hour for the charrette, what we're calling the charrette portion of the meeting. And so if we do that, we'll have time to revisit public comment, and we do a report out at the end.
Great.
Okay,
Great.
good.
And I understand I could write something too, but I just don't feel I have enough information at this point and would really like to interact and better understand.
That sounds good. Well, let's talk about the charrette. Oh, Here we are. So, again, we have a lot of staff here to help you tonight really focus your comments on the scope and content of the EIR and what you want to see addressed. And more specifically, because we are so early in the design process, you know, addressing some of those concerns about trail crossings, wildlife corridors, where you might want to see certain amenities, parking lots, maybe there's a new parking lot that we want to put by the National Monument or a new access point. Given your experience out in Fort Ord, your insight is incredibly helpful. So, we've got some rules of the road, pardon the pun. We want to be able to make sure we recognize and respect differences in others' opinions at the table. We want to give everybody a chance to speak and share the time together. Be courteous and don't be judgmental. Stay focused on the group conversation and don't break off into side conversations. A lot of people are here that aren't very familiar with this process or this area, and they will garner a lot of education from others' insight on this area and this process, so don't leave anybody out. So you'll have a facilitator at each of your tables to keep the conversation going and take notes on these flip charts. I'm sorry.
I was wondering how many tables you're going to suggest. Because we have one solitary back here.
Let's do 3.
2 or 3, actually.
Yeah, maybe let's marry some of these together. Let's try to do 3. So, find a new table.
Are certain tables focused on certain things, like if
No,
I'm interested
no.
in your, I'm sorry, Andy, are you the one who's has more information on the specific crossings and what some of these trailheads be like, or is it anybody at any?
Oh, yeah,
Well, so
the tables are the same, but yeah, maybe if you want to pick your facilitator, we should probably.
well, I think we've got some flexibility. So it's not like Oak Woodlands where we're looking at trails or other amenities or anything like that. Everyone's got the same information. Each facilitator has the same questions to encourage the conversation. Each facilitator is going to do the same thing in terms of keeping notes. What we do have are some expertise. We have our traffic engineer, we've got our civil engineer, we've got our environmental, and we've got other expertise here in the room. And we can rove around and answer questions and help you out.
Yeah, like personalized consultant.
Yes. So we have enough staff here tonight to do that. So I think if you want to, let's see the best way to do that. Let me think about how to get a facilitator or Frederick or Andy around to answer some questions, and maybe we can circulate. Why don't we circulate facilitators? Like, pass the facilitator.
Hey, we have a traffic question.
That's a good idea.
So, do you want to be a note taker then?
Let's do that. We'll switch them off.
Is there in Asia?
People are able to cross safely, including like stop signs, street lights, tunnels, overpasses, roundabouts, and then also we were talking about not only just people or bikers, but animal crossing, how to safely get maybe a horse across for equestrian uses, and then also people who might have accessibility issues such as strollers or the elderly. We were talking about areas that people here who use the monument a lot have seen mountain lions or bobcats and things like that, and trying to preserve those areas. Let's see. The blue road alternative we were saying we liked because this isn't impacting habitat as it's already developed. You're not losing any oak woodland. We were wondering how big the road was going to be, like how wide it's going to be, and the impacts on habitat and fragmentation depending on how wide, because we know you said it was 2 lanes, but weren't sure how wide what that actually meant width-wise. We talked about with the proposed alignment, in between the proposed alignment and Inner Garrison, there's that island again that we were talking about where wildlife can kind of get trapped, and it's harder to cross here. Also talking about the potential light impacts with a new alignment that isn't already an existing road. Talking about what do recreational users want to see, maybe a parking lot at 8th and Giggling. The main thing you're saying that new recreational users want to see is once they leave the trailhead, they don't want to see another road. So that was one of the big things. Talking about where the signs were for, what's it called, Morca?
Morca
Yeah.
installs the signs
Where they have
with,
been putting in these
partnership with the
signs,
county.
trying to kind of preserve these trails, is already some work has been going into making them nicer. We talked about alternatives and what values we'd like to see in alternatives that reduce impacts. Choosing an alignment that's already on a road. Talking about the combination of maybe the blue and yellow, and potentially a totally different alignment that kind of goes, I think it's kind of in between the blue and the yellow through like the travel camp. Again, what's our safest design options for people crossing? Something like the lights at the sports center. I don't know if people are familiar with that crossing. Talking about how in Fort Ord, the area that's not impacted is shrinking, and that's something that we're concerned about is there not being as much area not impacted. Talking about if there was other ways to achieve the congestion goals. We were asking how the roads are allowed to go through these HMP areas, which Aaron also explained to us. And another concern we brought up kind of late in the game was fire danger. So some of these new roads being along areas that have high fire potential. Again, how a lot of we also were discussing how there's some trails that right now have the potential to go away due to some of the BLM plans and HMP plans, and to lose trails even further to this road would have even more impact, more cumulative impact. Talking about potentially adding new trailheads at Eucalyptus, and then what it might look like to add a new trailhead kind of more in the middle of Fort Ord, but we're kind of saying that might not be as great because you have to do a parking lot or whatever that might take more habitat. So yeah, that's about it, unless I forgot something.
Yeah, just
Yes.
to clarify, I think regarding the travel camp, we were not suggesting running an alignment through the travel camp. There's a lot of local races and stuff, but Erin had mentioned she was looking at that during some phase of her investigation.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that was not our suggestion. That's near the top.
I think it's right here.
Yeah.
I'll cross that out. All right. That's it.
Good job.
Great. Table 2? Map 2? I think that's you. Oh, Andy, do you think you could just take a second and address Henrietta's question about the full build-out, how wide the road would be, and with or without bike
Okay,
lanes? Or
yeah, that question was coming up on our side too. So a typical 2-lane road could be anywhere from 10 to 12 foot lanes. So 11 foot is kind of a sweet spot. So that's 22 feet for lanes. And if you have bike lanes on the side, that could be anywhere from 4 to 8 feet. 6 feet are probably a nominal size, a good size for bike lanes. So that's the 12
see the comments? Okay. I am not going to read this at you. We have a wrap up in 1 minute, roughly. But
that costs 5 minutes. 4 minutes fast. So
you
great.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So I sat with this great group. One person had to leave early, but we have a lot of comments written down. And along the lines of the environmental issues and impacts that concern the group, mostly it had to do with trail continuity. There was concern that the road that is as proposed would cut through a lot of trails, and you can see we had some folks mark down trailheads and major trails that are in use to their understanding for pedestrians and bicyclists, and we're particularly concerned that there would be impacts on those having to do with continuity, access for recreation, and noise. And so there's also some trailheads that were mentioned, and those environmental issues as those are used more and more and people are getting more access via the roadway into the area, that there would be more erosion because of that. This green arrowing here is the perceived major wildlife corridor. And so that was a great concern as well for making sure to minimize impacts to wildlife. I think you can put that down now. And we can just, if you want to flip through these so people get to read, but I'm going to do the summary. So you can read it, but I'm going to summarize. The design features that may be incorporated to reduce and avoid impacts. Many people highlighted traffic calming measures, trailheads that would be established but permeable, and design feature, this is kind of a big one, is looking at the other alternatives and maybe going with yellow, or making an alternative that skirts a little closer to BLM lands, because there was a lot of concern at this table that this proposed new roadway is just too close to Inner Garrison. It doesn't make sense to be that close, was how it's expressed. And also another suggestion was along Barlow Canyon and out Eucalyptus to utilize established roads moving through there. Yeah, so other incorporated features are separated bike path, an unpaved separated bike path, and not sidewalks. We prefer to see walkers and bicyclists and equestrians mixed together off of the road. And as you can see, a lot of the other ones here, whoops, we drew a blank. And then, so we have a couple of folks here that came from East Garrison. We're particularly concerned with Watkins Gate impacts, just avoid Watkins Gate if possible. And there's a lot of impacts, the wildlife flow. Oh, and impacts on Co Avenue were highlighted. And also at Cape and Giggling impacts. The fiber graywater infrastructural improvements should be part of construction. That was strongly recommended. And everyone agreed they should be underground, not put any more above ground lighting or, they didn't say lighting, above ground power. And like I said, trail access and a lot of pro-yellow alignment, and a lot of ideas about how to have really good trailheads. So hopefully these folks will follow up when there's more of a design and give feedback for the trailheads. So that's about it. Is everybody comfortable with the report out? Thank you.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Good conversation.
All right, table 3.
We were table 3, and I was chosen to report out. So just going over the concerns from the group, the environmental concerns. They noted that we should avoid at-grade crossings wherever possible, to maintain the wildlife and oak corridors, to abate the noise. One of the possibilities, you could use corrugated wall with the kind of folds in the wall that can abate noise. Another suggestion was to collect, our concern was to collect the oil and the other pollutants from the traffic to prevent that contamination into our environment. Concern brought up was about traffic congestion, and that this road may just have may create other new choke points. in the circulation system. There's also a concern that the traffic congestion would persist even when this road goes in. A concern about how would this road affect other roads. So where do the traffic volume shifts? If this road goes in, does it affect another road we hadn't thought about? And then other concerns were about development that's proposed along Giggling Road that may impact this road, as well as concern that we should create incentives for mass transit as part of envisioning this project, this proposed project. We also discussed design alternatives. So design alternatives included the to improve 8th and Giggling parking. You can make it a park and ride and or a bus stop was a suggestion. This is another concern that came up during the design discussion. If Giggling is 4 lanes, how does that connect to this proposed 2-lane facility? So just a concern about the coordinating designs. And then another design comment was about Highway 1 and Highway 68 interchange as an effective interchange today. So consider roundabouts at Giggling and this proposed connector at Parker Flats and the proposed connector in other intersections. Another design item was about connecting the roads with the City of Seaside. So example was Parker Flats Road and how that connects. Right now it's closed off after the cemetery. It would have to be opened or could be opened to connect to the connector. Another suggestion was about a parking area or a park and ride near East Garrison and a parking in the vicinity of the halfway point within the connector. And then looking at underpasses for wildlife and hikers, having separate underpasses was a suggestion on design. And then having a separated and protected bike lanes. Also take into consideration the aesthetics of intersections, make trailheads attractive. Other things, suggestions within that of making trailheads attractive was have a water fountain and bathrooms at the trailheads, have signage and trail maps, and coordinate with the BLM on their trails. Also with the signage, there was a comment about have signage but don't have too much. And then study the pros and cons of overpasses versus underpasses and land bridges. Okay, then looking at the alternatives, we had quite a strong discussion on the alternatives. A couple of comments about supporting the blue lines as a superior alternative. Some thoughts on that was that there would be fewer wildlife and oak impacts on that alignment. And then there's just a slight concern on that would be the sharp left turn on 8th Avenue from Inner Garrison to 8th Avenue. And then there was also a suggestion to consider the yellow alternative. It could have potentially fewer impacts to East Garrison community. So that, I hope, was a quick summary of our group. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Just a quick question. That left turn you were describing, the sharp left turn, is that your roundabout?
Currently a roundabout.
Great, thanks. And so did any members of the public want to spend a few minutes, your 3 minutes, to state any public comments for the record, or you can submit them in writing? But we've got 6 minutes. Two speakers? Oh, right. I thought you knew of 2. I was thinking, okay.
Or you could have 50.
Great. So what I'd like to do is make sure we collect all the comments you want us to collect. If you want to take something home and submit it with your written comments, that's fine. You can't take the big maps, though. You can take the little ones. And there's comment cards, comment sheets if you want to take those with you. Again, you can snail mail them, you can email them, however you choose. Just do it, please, by September 25th at 5 p.m. Any other questions? Does anyone want to come again tomorrow night?
One quick comment. This is not set in stone that this whole route of these color routes have to be followed in their entirety. You can take parts of them and kind of mold them into one route that makes better sense.
Correct.
You don't have to say, oh, I like the blue line because that's the best. You could say, well, I like the part of the orange or part of the blue and then part of the pink.
Right,
know?
that's a great question.
So it doesn't have to be all in one route in its entirety. It could be kind of mixed between the two or three.
So really good question, and what we'll find as a result of the technical analyses, biological, traffic, noise, all of those things, we can try to pick the best of all the worlds and create an environmentally superior alternative. We're required to identify that as part of the EIR. And so that would be the goal, is to find the best fit. And that of course depends on acquiring right of way and permitting issues, and you know, we're juggling a lot of balls, but I think that our our technical analyses will help guide us a little bit, as well as input from the public. So yes, you can Frankenstein them.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
So how will this project?
Frederick, what are you doing?
I'm struggling with this, and maybe some people do. How will this project impact, if I can use that word, the master plan project of CSU, or vice versa, or are there?
That's a great question. So I think there are two master plan updates happening right now, one with the City of Seaside and one with CSUMB, and we need to acknowledge the drafts, so what we have to do in sequence, because they're not approved depending on the timing of our analyses, and technically we're supposed to go with the timing of the NOP. The timing of the NOP is issued, what do we rely on? So whatever is approved right now is what we rely on, but we want to take in consideration things that might happen. So we will be looking at all these build outs. You know, and one thing that someone else, well, a lot of people brought up were the trail plans, not just on BLM, but the Fort recreational habitat area, the FORA area of the county parcels. That's not approved because they're waiting for the HCP, but we're going to want to coordinate because that's the best available data that we have. So we're going to take what we can, best available data, and we're going to look at all of it. So if we impact CSUMB or CSUMB's proposals to impact us, you know, we'll work it out. We'll identify those and address them. All right, anything else?
Well, thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. And again, we are doing this tomorrow night in Seaside at the Soper Community Center at 6 to 8:30. You want to stop by again?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah.